Hello everyone, my name is Wolfclock and welcome to a special Betafied mini episode. Now for those of you who don't know, Betafied mini is a sub-series to Betafied where we take a look at things that don't quite match all of the Betafied checks that need to be passed for this to be considered a full episode, but still is more than enough to be considered somewhat Betafied related. Today we're going to be taking a look at footage from all collected builds that we actually have. Now, I know this may seem like a redundant thing since we already made a video covering all the builds that we had and didn't have back in 2020, I believe. However, some things have come up, and as a result, there are some more things that I have to show. In addition to this, we never actually showed any legitimate footage of the builds other than some short snippets in that previous video. So, I'm going to go ahead and start up some archival footage from the prototypes. You may or may not know this, but the prototype builds of the game, Gears for Breakfast, had asked our community to delete. And the reason for that was because it contained some leftover files from the Unreal Development Kit, which could potentially get Gears for Breakfast in trouble. So, by their wishes, we, of course, are obliged. And this is footage of a build that we no longer have saved, but we did have saved. And I think we can still count that. So this build in particular is titled vGobaiano. It was released to an individual, I believe, of that name for a website. And although this and the other proto build we have actually say that they're dated from the same time, this one is clearly earlier. It has a different lighting setup. It has a couple of earlier things that were disabled in the following build. And there are just other things that can prove that this build is actually earlier. So without further ado, this is not my footage, but it is some of the only footage I could find, and I will show a snippet of it now. So, an interesting thing to talk about here is that, although both prototypes had Mafia on fire, the second prototype that we will be showing some archived footage of in a few minutes actually had Mafia on fire disabled by default. With that being that the only way to re-enable it would be to go into the console and load it up yourself. In 2018 or maybe 2019, I believe, I had actually uploaded footage of this on the later prototype, in addition to some other unused acts. And we will be looking at that archival footage in just a little bit. So as you can see here, we have the old harbor stuff here, the harbor bridge. That was used up until the final game, even as late as the beta, and even the art for the act Cheating the Race has that texture of the earlier stuff on the bridge. That is, of course, being a leftover from the Arbor era developments, which we have no builds for. That would have been late 2012. So, this footage doesn't really do much justice in terms of showing off the differences between this and the later prototype. But I chose this one because the video is longer. I will pause this right about now and actually switch over to a video that does show the difference. So, we'll be right back. Alright, we are back with another sequence from this earlier prototype. As you can see, the lighting is very strange. And more importantly, we're going to see a level that's not in the later prototype. Watch this. So, this is the first obstacle course type level that was made for Hat in Time. In the video, a Hat in Time obstacle course, this is what's used. It is called Secret Level Rectangles. That is the name that is of the map file itself, and that is the name that the community has given it. This has been ported to the final game, so you are able to play it on modern Hat in Time. What fun, right? It's not a very good obstacle course, admittedly. But I digress. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. This was version vGobaiano, and we will be switching over now to my own footage of our second prototype. Alright, we are back. So this is our second prototype, which I refer to as Narcissa Wright's build, so as to not, dead name the original owner of this build. This, again, is listed as being about from the same time as the other prototype, but we know through analysis that it's clearly not. So, the interesting thing that I want to showcase here, and this is a video that you can find on my channel right now. It's titled A Hat in Time Prototype Mustache Girl Tag. I believe we may also refer to this as Time Thief, although I'm not sure if that was the actual name or not. Essentially, the sequence is playing tag with Mustache Girl, trying to keep one's timepiece away from the other. Very interesting stuff. Another thing that had to be found by using console commands, of course. So, a few interesting things to note about this build is that this version of the prototype is the version that most people got back when the prototype was being given out in 2013 for people to play test and review. So, Brutal Moose, I believe, if In the Littlewood got one, I believe it was this one as well. All the different people, just about everyone got this version. As a matter of fact, I believe the only different versions that we know of are vGobaiano, which was earlier, which we already showcased, and oh no, I'm blanking on what the name of it was. This is somewhat impromptu of a video, I'm going to be honest, but the other one was made for, that's my search will be there. It's an old video. I don't actually recall everything that happens. That's right, the version that was made for Gaijin Goomba had some differences, some rather substantial ones, as a matter of fact. That is the only one that we know about publicly. There was also one that was made for the game's current composer, Pascal, and we know that because in the alpha there are leftover references to a V Pascal for the prototypes. Anyway, that is just about everything I have to showcase in terms of the protos. Next up, we will be moving to the alphas. Okay, and we are back inside Alpha 0. This is what is referred to as the music room, and that name comes from it being used to test audio cues, specifically for music. Obviously, that being one. Nothing working there. Nothing working there. Nothing working there. And that is because, as you can see, I attempted to push action music with layer 100, but layer is already occupied. So everything is trying to use the same layer in terms of audio here, and things don't quite work as intended. That being said, that plays the music for entering Queen Vanessa's manor, and this will do a little animation to show the timepiece here. Wonderful. Another thing to note is the player has 7 pieces of health. This is actually the earliest health bar that was made for the game. I believe it was first made in UDK game, I don't want to say day 2, but it might have been as early as day 2 when that was made. Very simple health bar. Obviously, the player having 7 health is significantly different from the final game, and even the beta and later versions of the alpha. But it's something that I wanted to point out. So let's go ahead and grab the timepiece, and we will move on to the beta. Beautiful. No music is playing. Let's move on, shall we? Alright, here we have the Beta Update 2. This is the most common beta build, as it was one of the first that we'd ever gotten as a community. I actually know the person who was the original owner of this build, and they were very gracious in providing So, interesting things about the beta. Well, it is much closer to the final game, although it's still very clearly very far out. Some things to note about it. Obviously, we have a closer to finalized version of the hub world, including the music, as opposed to Alpha version 0, which only uses the Moonjumpers theme for the hub. We have a lot more levels to choose from here, and a lot of different music, and all in all, it's just a very different version of the game. So let's go ahead and pop into an act here, and I'll showcase some things. Oh yeah, some free runs. So repairing the cannon is an interesting act because of just how strange it is. Strange and unfinished. Let's take a look, shall we? So this level would later become what we know in the final game as She Came from Outer Space. Presumably, in either case. And the belief for this, obviously, is because it is the nighttime level. Here we have one of the things that we do not see in the final game. This is the Mafia bot. Its voice lines are reused for Ruby, and we will hear that shortly, if I can just get close enough to it. Wonderful. Doesn't quite work the way it should, but that's alright. So, Mafia bots were interesting in that killing them would unlock things around Mafia Town. That's pretty much all there is to be said about them. That and that they later became Ruby, or at least their voice lines did. Here we have another example. This one would raise the platform up, but we won't bother with that. Instead, I am going to go ahead and finish the act, just to show how unfinished it is in its own right. And one more thing to note, because this gets changed in the next beta build that I will be showcasing. So notice how the pros are able to jump at the player. This is something that is not seen again in later builds. Thought that would be interesting. As we get up here, all we need to do is make it to Thor, who is up at the clock tower. Oh, well, that may have been a mistake. No, we're fine. I meant observatory. Yes, that is the entirety of the level. So imagine if in Super Mario 64 you were to get a star just for talking to Red Bomb. We'll go ahead and grab this, and we will move on to our next build. So here we have beta version 3, also referred to as the Smoky build. The name of which comes from a user poll that we had taken on the Hat in Time content Discord when this build had first been located. So, this build, surprisingly, despite the fact that it is just one update after our previous beta build...
Good morning, and welcome to yet another day of space adventure.
Actually contains a lot of differences. Let's go ahead and skip this opening, because there is something for me to showcase.
The fuel tank is full and the ship is flying at full speed. Today's to-do list contains...
So, for starters, let's go up here and take a look at the icons on the screen. They are different from the previous build. Right there. Those are all different icons. and I will show a comparison once I get to editing this video. Let's continue on. I will show a different difference once we make the Monkey Town. So I hope you all recall that I've mentioned that the Mad Crows had been able to jump, because when we make it into this build, we will find that that is no longer the case. And no Mustache Crows. There we go. I believe there are some crows over here. So as you can see, they are not jumping. However, they do still make the noises that they were making in the previous build. All they do is walk towards the player. Voila. There are quite a number of other differences that are in this build. However, I will simply link a video that explains them in more detail in the description. I believe that is all I really wanted to showcase for this build. That there's a few minor differences between this version and the previous. And without further ado, we will be moving along. So this is the September 30th, 2017 Speedrun Event build. This obviously released very close to the game's final release, and so there are minimal yet still noticeable differences inside of this version of the game. For starters, this of course is just from the speedrunning event, which means there are 3 levels for the player to speedrun. I will not go all the way through it, but I will do a couple of levels here. Floors for this width, that is. And I will talk about it. So, the speedrunning event, if you had participated in it, which is to say if you had been a member of the community at the time who would have been able to have participated in it, you will have been able to receive a unique speedrunning hat in the final game. I can go ahead and find a picture to show right now, and I will show that on the screen now. So, this is the first level, obviously being the Mafia Town Purple Rift. There is a noticeable difference with a later version of the game that I'll also be showcasing in the next level, I believe it is. And so, I may as well skip ahead forward to that, starting now. So, here we are in the Sewers Time Rift. This is the second level in the speedrunning event. I wanted to showcase it because of a particular point that we will be coming up on in just a moment here. And it's not even for itself in isolation, but more so for what we will be seeing in the next level. The next build, that is. So here you see these crumbling cookie platforms. Keep in mind of these crumbling cookie platforms and where they are. That is pretty much all I wanted to showcase, actually, so I'm going to skip ahead to our next build. This is the performance build. I don't know why it's called the performance build. I'm assuming that the changes were related to performance. Anyway, it was a second update to the speedrun build, which released the following day as said speedrun build. There are very few notable differences. However, first off, it does not have a 32-bit version, or at least our archived version doesn't, so you have to play the 64-bit version. Second off, take a look at that. Instead of cookies, you have red falling platforms. And this is because of a war that was ongoing in a portion of the community and with developers on whether or not the cookies should stay. Other than that, there are minimal changes made to the game, but I'm sure there are some more than we have already discovered. That regularly, and back when I made the original video, would have concluded our showcase. But I certainly hope you didn't think that I was just going to finish it off like this, right? No. There's a reason why I made this video. And that reason, well, you'll find out in just a second. But let's just say I didn't go in fully chronological. Let's move on to our next build, shall we? So, this build is another beta build. As a matter of fact, this build is beta version 0. The first ever version of the beta that was ever released to the community. Let's take a look at some of the differences, shall we? So, here are some differences that I mentioned were between beta updates 2 and 3. As you can see, this is no longer an explosion, it's just a circle, and the home looks much more simplified. There are some other differences to take a look at. Let me skip ahead and we'll show some of them. As you can see here, the sewer rift for Subcon does not have localization in it yet. I would allege that this was likely because they had chosen it probably last minute to showcase for the beta, and they had simply forgotten to include the file that would include the localizations for it. There are, of course, other differences to be noted in this build, although I'm not going to go over all of them. I just want to showcase that we have this build now. Obviously, this is still ongoing because this is a fairly new discovery, and I've kept it relatively quiet, only showing it to a couple of different people at the time of recording. So yeah, pretty interesting new stuff, which leads me on to our last thing. You may have noticed this video's not quite done yet. If we pause recording, I'll show you something pretty interesting. So, this is the newest build that we have collected. This is, for those of you very few who do not know, Alpha Update 5. This is a build that we have been searching for since 2017, and just a number of days ago, at the time of recording, I had finally received a clean, locally sourced version of this build. Now, Alpha version 5 has quite a few different things to look at. For starters, the player health has been reduced to 4. The music in the opening is now the Hub World music as opposed to the Moonjumper theme. There's one other thing that I want to showcase. When we select Chapter 1, Act 1 of Mafia Town, take a listen to the music. As you can see, there is a different theme that plays at the start, as long as you're in the opening area there. This is something that is not in Alpha version 0, the version that we have, nor is it in Beta version 0, a version that we also now have. That means between all the different versions of the Alpha that have this is the only version. This is something that we knew about, too, but we didn't have the original pieces until now, with this build. There are a lot of different things to showcase and look at in this build, and we actually haven't... Oh my god, shut up! Oh my god, it's so loud! So anyway, as I was saying, there are a lot of things to still take a look into about this build. We have only begun to crack the surface, and I would like to spend a moment here to thank everybody who's been in the community for as long as they've been, because we've been looking for these builds for years now, and the fact that we now have this, especially this build, is just, it opens up a whole new chapter to A Hat in Time Cut content. Now, if you want to stay up to date on when we find these new builds, as well as the discoveries that we find inside of them, feel free to join the Hat in Time Cut Content Discord. A link will be provided in the description. In addition, we also now have a Lost Media wiki page for all the lost pieces of media related to A Hat in Time. We have a cutting room floor page, which is ever growing and being developed by contributors and members of our community. And yeah, I believe that's just about everything to showcase for this video. If you liked it, please feel free to subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video, which I hope will be soon. Thank you all so much for watching.